Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Courtroom Confidential. We've got a small group, but I think it's going to grow because Mr. Tellis is still on the stand. I didn't realize how late they were going to allow testimony to go today, but I guess when you have a absolute sociopath on the stand, nobody wants to stop him from talking because who knows what he might say. So if you haven't heard or if you've been watching and you're just tuning in to see what this is all about, Robert Tellis, accused of killing an investigative reporter, Jeff Gehrman. Uh, he's gone through his entire trial. The prosecution has rested. The defense put on their case. The defense has been, kind of slogging through this whole thing, but I think you can blame a lot of that on being hamstrung by a essentially really ridiculous defense. I mean, they're trying to go with this idea that he was framed and all set up, rather than kind of more obvious. This was, that wasn't him. You can't ID this person. Okay, putting aside the DNA under the fingerprints, I realize that is the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. But you could think of a lot of other defenses they could have gone with. But the one that they went with was that Robert Tellis was framed in some sort of massive, ridiculous, hard to follow cover up. And the reason for that is exactly the same reason why this man is now on the stand. This man, I fully believe, is an absolute narcissist in the flesh, and that you're actually seeing that kind of psychology play itself out here to the maximum degree. And that is why he's also testifying. And one of the reasons I wanted to hop on and talk about this is he's testifying what's called the narrative form, or testifying in the narrative. I was really trying to think today, my entire career, I can't think if I've ever seen this happen. Maybe it happened one time that I remember somebody testifying in the narrative. And this is used so rarely because the instances it's usually reserved for, though the defense will never say this, the attorney will never say this out loud, and the court will never explain this to the jury, and the jury, quite frankly, shouldn't know, is that the reason that the defense does this is that the attorney himself doesn't want to suborn perjury. He realizes that to put his client on the stand, he's got duties to his client to zealously advocate on behalf of his client, but he's also got his own ethical duties to preserve his bar card, which include not suborning perjury, not allowing someone to get up there and knowingly lie. And it's not just about allowing someone to lie, but if you're asking them questions and leading them through a narrative that you know to be false, you are essentially promoting, advocating on behalf of perjury to the jury. So to allow for defendants to still exercise their right to testify on their own behalf, and allow attorneys to preserve their ability to maintain their bar card and their own ethical standards, they allow for this very, very rare situation of allowing a defendant to testify in what's called narrative form. So it's essentially the attorney's not going to lead him through this. He's not going to really play a role in it. He's going to allow him to get up there on the stand and just have at it, dude. Just tell your story. Whatever you feel like you need to get out there in front of the jury, go ahead and do it. But you're the one taking the oath, and I'm not going to be the one standing by as the attorney to allow you to lie to these jurors when I know it may be a lie. Shaquille Oatmeal says he has a complete mess on the stand, fumbling and mumbling around craziness. Well, you've seen more of it than I have. I watched just a little bit of it to make sure that it was happening. But I kind of wanted to preserve it all to watch it with you folks so that we could all be reacting to it at the same time. So we're going to jump in really quick. A couple of housekeeping things. One, if you guys haven't already, please, subscribe to this channel, like this channel. Longo Tavir just joined up as a member. That brings me to my other thing I was going to promote to you guys. We just launched a membership program. If you haven't heard about it already, we're very excited about it. We're still working on it, still adding programming to it. It's really fun stuff that we're planning on launching, including if you can see this, merchandise that we're trying to get in now. We're making sure that it's of quality standards that you will all appreciate. Along with mugs and t-shirts and everything else. So we have a lot in store for everyone that we're excited about. One little glitch that I'm finding out is if you're watching this on a mobile app, because billion-dollar corporations can't cooperate with each other, you cannot just sign up for the membership over the app, and you actually have to go on to YouTube on your internet browser on your computer and click the join button, and you can find out about all of that there. Thank you so much, Jody. We love them too. I think they're going to look really cool when we have them kind of finally figured out so that it's something we can be very proud to send to you all. That being said, I wanted to give a special shout out and thanks to some of our new members: Disney Nerd 85, Ida Shaw, JD, Future ZX9TS. That sounds like one of Elon Musk's children. Laura Waldy, Raven, Pammy, and Terry L are all recent members, as is everybody else, because the membership program's so darn new. Thank you so much for signing up. All right, let's jump into this thing. So basically what I understand is going to happen is he's going to get up there and just have at it. Just tell the jurors whatever he feels like these jurors need to hear. Let's go ahead and jump in. If you guys have questions, please go ahead and submit them. We'll try to make sure to flag them and answer them as we can along the way.
Okay, the record reflects that the hearing is taking place outside the presence of the jury panel. Mr. Jaskowitz.
Your Honor, our final witness is Mr. Robert Pellis. I've confirmed with Rob Bear, and we're going to ask the court's permission to allow him to testify by narrative.
Okay, that is fine. Anything else before we bring the jury panel in?
I love this judge. She is just a ball of nerves. He's kind of got a Nancy Grace thing going on. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for joining up. Oh, good. That's so nice. They guys sent you over. Fantastic. Oh, very cool. Thank you guys for coming over.
In front of the panel.
Those guys are hard to top, so I hope I don't disappoint.
He wants all the exhibits?
Or this is our copy of them. State have.
He's asking for agreement. I love this. I love this. He is planning on putting on a presentation here.
An objection to him using those exhibits. It seems like he may have notes though in front of him. So if he's using those notes, we're going to need it.
And just so the record's clear, Mr. Truss, are you intending?
Thanks,
referring
Michelle.
to your notes in the course of your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Then I'm going to need a copy of this.
I'm providing the state a copy.
Oh, he's ready.
Okay, just really quickly. There's a rule that whatever the witness has in front of them, the opposite side is allowed to have a copy of that. You're allowed to show a witness anything. In law school, they told us you could show them a plate of spaghetti if you feel like that might refresh their memory. But the rule is whatever you show them and whatever they have in front of them, the opposing side is allowed to have a copy of that. So he's brought up some notes here, and good God help us, it looks like several pages of notes. And the prosecution is saying, I want to have a copy of that. So he came prepared. He came with receipts.
Does Mr. Draskowitz have a copy of the defendant's exhibit list with him that I provided earlier? Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. I
And
appreciate
Mr.
it.
Tellus, you have a copy of the exhibit list?
I've written those exhibit numbers next to my,
Perfect.
so I'm good on that and everything, as long as I can read my writing.
When he's ready for them, I will pull them.
And Your Honor, in order for this to proceed smoothly, when he refers to it, when Mr. Tullis refers to an exhibit, shall either myself or
All
even.
right, very, very please.
Yeah, Amy told me. That she will make sure
I mean-
the record's clear.
Already that tie is ridiculous. This guy is he's just fantastic to even watch. I think they put him on the stand just to not make a presentation out of the whole thing. They knew he was going to be the next witness, and so they just had him sitting up. You
Does the
imagine the
state
jurors walking
stipulate
out
to the
right now,
presence of the
seeing him on
panel?
the stand.
Mr. Jaskowitz?
Thank you.
Yeah, you'll stipulate,
We'll stipulate.
all right? Mr. Jaskowitz, we're gonna call Mr.
Your Honor,
Tellus.
the defense calls Mr. Robert Tullis.
Please raise your right hand. You do
So
solemnly
so
swear the
crazy with
testimony
this
you're
dude.
about to give
Thank you,
this action
KTG.
shall be the truth, the whole truth.
And you're
nothing but the
absolutely
truth,
right.
So help you God.
I do.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Robert Bayes. The first name is Robert. The last name is Telles.
Thank you, Joanne.
Mr. Tullis, the state is going to allow you, I think the court is going to allow you to testify by way of narration. So please tell us. Begin with your story.
Tell us.
Thank you, sir. And so, first of all, and excuse me, I'm obviously a little nervous. This is it's a day I've been waiting for nearly 2 years. You know, this thing's been kind of a nightmare, frankly. And again, I want to thank you for being here. And right now, I want to say unequivocally, I'm innocent. I didn't kill Mr. Gurman. And I've got a lot to share with you all. There's been a lot of testimony, and my concern is making sure that you hear what I think about all these things, and you know what would the concerns that I have with some of these things that have been brought up. So during
Like
my
the fact
testimony,
that you've been accused
I'm
of
going to be
murder.
sharing opinions. I know that folks like Zach Schilling and Mr. Mogg shared their opinions with you, and these opinions were, almost, I guess you could say, argumentative in a sense, right? Basically, Zach Schilling said, "Well, I'm an expert on shoes, and I think that those shoes that the killer was wearing are the same ones that I've seen the shit wearing all the time, right?" So he's arguing that he's an expert, and you should believe it. And I think the same goes for Mr. Mogg, right? So I think that when I share an opinion with you, someone might say it's argumentative. And when I say something, I guess I specifically mean the state. But I think that when I share an opinion with you, that's my right. And it's your right to decide whether or not you agree with my opinion or not, whether you want to adopt my opinion or not. So I'm just hoping that, I'm not stopped from sharing with you what I have to say.
I am fascinated by this guy's psychology because, okay, first of all, we all know this already, that he is he was a lawyer in past life. So to some extent, he's, calling back on that, I'm sure a little bit, but just the way that he already began, he's looking at the jurors. I don't know if I have a huge problem with that. I think it's unnerving for them, but this isn't the type of, this isn't like a testimony of a person falsely accused of murder and begging for people to understand that they have to do the right thing and not convict this man and put him away for the rest of his life. This to me seems like a guy sitting in his boardroom with his staff having a meeting about, lunchroom cleanliness. The demeanor of him is just already kind of takes you back. And the way he's talking is in this closing argument type of way. This is argument. This is him appealing to them. And again, if he's going to do it in the narrative, I don't know if I have a huge problem with that, but I guess I'm just pointing out how you don't see this. Like I said, my entire career, I'm racking my brain to think of a time when I ever saw this, and I don't think I ever did.
And I guess right off the bat, I'll share an opinion with you. The medical examiner testified about how Mr. Gurman was murdered. And, I had to see pictures of Mr. Gurman's body, in preparation for the case. And it's obviously it's ugly. But when the medical examiner testified, that's the first time I'd learned how Mr. Gurman was murdered. Now, I think it's the way that he was murdered speaks to, I think, something or someone who knows what they're doing. The idea that Mr. Gurman's throat was slashed and his heart was stabbed. You know, I think that's, I mean, I don't know if anybody could just do that, right? Without some kind of training, without some kind of expertise.
Holy crap.
So, I mean, and I'm personally not combat trained. I've, you know, and none of that. So it seems to me that when I heard that, I thought, you know, my God, you know, so that's just one example of like the type of opinion
I mean, he just said when he started this whole thing that he's been thinking about this moment for 2 years. And that's true. He's had nothing to do but sit in a jail cell for months and months and months and think about nothing but this moment, this trial, and this exact moment right here. And I still feel like he's just kind of being extemporaneous, like he's just kind of winging it. Like, again, speaking to his narcissism, that he just thinks that, you know what, throw me in front of these 12 fine folks and I'll convince them otherwise.
sharing with you. And I want to also provide relevant facts.
His lawyer stepped back and took a seat and said, thank God my job is over.
Disprove a lot of what has been
He's just
said.
happy the check cashed.
And also when it comes to some of the witnesses, some of the documents that I'm going to try to get in are going to kind of go to, you know, whether or not they're being truthful. So again, I'm hoping that I'll be able to get those documents into. I guess we'll see how that goes as well. First, I want to kind of go into my background a little bit. So out of high school, I got a job at a small computer store and, you know, building computers, that type of thing. And then I got an opportunity to work in IT, right? Information technology, working as a network technician. The .com crash occurred. And from there, I ended up going into property management. And, you know, I enjoyed that. I became a leasing agent, then an assistant manager, then a manager.
Thank you, girl, Ryan.
Then I took a strange turn and got into maintenance, you know, fixing stuff inside apartments, that type of thing. And from there, started to get involved in air conditioners. So then I became an HVAC technician, an air conditioning technician. And it was all, you know, self-study. All right. I took a course for the EPA certification, which is, you know, the license that you're required in order to handle like refrigerant, like Freon, those types of things. But you know, I kind of learned like the basics of air conditioning on my own. And the only reason I say it is, you know, like going along is like I've kind of developed this analytical mind, right? And so that led to me becoming an attorney. And so then that even built more on that analytical mind, where I think about, you know, all the things, like all the things wrong in this case. And you add on top of that, the fact that I've been sitting in a cell for close to 2 years. So I've had a lot of time to think about a lot of these issues. So again, I think I'm going to point out some strange things about this case. But anyway, going back to you know, my background. So became an HVAC technician. I started working at the College of Southern Nevada. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to name check I was going to say local community college. Sorry, I'm very nervous. Excuse me. So I started working at CSM, managing a team, and I was doing that by day.
I mean, this man's on another planet. I mean, are we all feeling the same way about this thing? He's just he's doing that thing where it's scripted emotion. Jay says, never would have I thought the day when I'd see someone worse than Murdoch. Yeah, this is a true person who's you know, wearing human skin, trying to figure out how to act like a human being. It's really fascinating. He's doing his best to show, I think, empathy and understanding and personable, you know, build rapport with the jurors. And it's coming off as incredibly unnerving. Life history of me. It's all about poor me. Exactly right. if I hadn't known what we're looking at and what trial this was, I would think the guy's, applying for a job or giving a stump speech. I mean, it's like there's a dead man, and so far we've spent a majority of our time talking about his childhood.
And I went to law school at night. They have a part-time program at Boyd School, or they did then anyway. I don't know if they still have it, but I went through law school at night. But before I got into law school, I met my wife online. We started dating. I got into law school. We got married. We had our daughter together. So by this point, I had a stepson. I had my daughter from a previous marriage, and then my wife and I had our daughter together. When I got out of law school, I opened my own probate firm, or my own law firm, and I focused on probate law. Now, you heard this term earlier from Detective Jappy, probate, and also, of course, a couple of other witnesses. And, I do have a correction for, I guess, the way that Detective Jappy characterized probate law, but I'll get into that as we discuss further Compass Realty. So I want to go from here, from my probate work, into how I became the public administrator. I was, again, a probate attorney, working cases for families. And John Cahill, the public administrator at the time, he saw me in court and, saw that I was, kind of a new face. And so he started giving me a couple of cases here and there. He worked with various attorneys throughout town.
This is why this guy went through
So
so many attorneys. This is what
started
he
doing some
wanted
work
to
for him.
do. This is what he wanted his
And
case to be about.
I can't remember exactly how long I've been working for him, at least a few months, maybe 6 months. But I was part of this volunteer group. And we had these weekly meetings where we would bring people in to speak, right? And the group was very interested in learning about things happening in Vegas, right? So I thought, well, gosh, getting the Clark County Public Administrator in to speak would be really great.
Thanks,
because
KTG.
nobody knows what this guy does. When you hear the title Clark County Public Administrator, a lot of people think that we're talking about the guy who runs the whole county or something, right? I mean, that's oftentimes when I was in the office, I had these emails from people telling me to fix this on that side of town, or this, that, whatever issue, right? So it's the public administrator, is the probate administrator for the county. And again, it's basically the office that safeguards property until family can step in. Because again, when the coroner got there, the coroner couldn't find the family.
Can you imagine? You're one of the jurors. You sat through a couple of weeks of this. You've heard about this horrific murder. You've seen all of this. You're right, Jay. I am getting frustrated. All of this evidence. It's all building towards this moment. This is the crescendo. You walk out of, they didn't know he was going to get called. They walk out of the jury room. This gentleman is sitting there on the stand, and 15 minutes into this thing, they're getting a lesson on probate. I can't imagine how their heads must be spinning at this point. And beyond it being funny or ridiculous to watch, how insulting to these jurors. This is your opportunity, fella, to explain why they shouldn't find you guilty of taking another human being's life, and you're talking to them about probate and your job and your resume. If he starts going into what a wonderful human being he's been up until this point, I'm going to lose my mind.
So it's our job to do the safeguarding. And if for some reason the family can't or does not want to do the administration, our office takes over and does that administration.
They've got to have their notebooks closed. I mean,
got in there, hit the ground running.
Who's taking notes?
We're working. I find out at a certain point as I'm going to court that there's a situation with some of these private administrators. Now, a private administrator is, when we talk about them, is anybody who is handling administrations, or really, I'd say private corporate administrators, because any family member could be a private administrator, right? The probate commissioner, who is basically an appointee of the probate judges, he had these concerns with
I
some of these folks. Right?
honestly
And
did not think
I
I
was
would
in a hearing
find
one day
myself
where
bored
he
in
asked me to
watching
take a
some-
look at a case. And, the attorney for
the man
this,
testifying
one of these guys
in his
or
own
one of
behalf
these
for
firms was
defense
there.
on
And,
murder,
we were
and he's
talking.
going to do it in the narrative,
And,
and
he
find
told me
ourselves
that,
just
that his client had been doing these things for
zoning out.
so much time. And that the prior public administrator didn't have a concern with it. And I asked him, well, where are the, this is the first I'm hearing about this, he said, well, we've been
Sorry,
mailing
I had to speed it
your
up
office
just a
notices every
slight
time
bit.
that we come to court. And so just FYI, the fact that these folks were required to send me notices was ordered by the probate commissioner because he was very troubled by what he saw going on with this firm. And so I told
Tammy,
him, I've been at this for maybe 7-8 months. And
I
this is the
don't
first
know
I'm
if I
hearing
ever
it.
have.
And so
I was
promise
trying to
send you
think,
every
and I
notice.
think
So
maybe
bring
one
it to the
time
office
in one case,
And I find out that,
with a
at the direction of the prior
real
public administrator,
uncontrollable
the
defendant,
office had
I've
been
seen
throwing
it.
away all of those documents. And they just basically continued on with that process of just
Not a
throwing the
person who
documents away.
owned a suit. Let's
And
put
I
it that
told,
way.
I told my staff, we're not doing that anymore. I need to look at these. I need to see why the probate commissioner was so concerned. So I did an analysis, and I found that there were some troubling concerns. I created a spreadsheet, and I guess at this point, I want to see if I could share X2.
Our next approach is to see what it is. I don't have the names because it's coded with the numbers.
They're asking to approach, but I'll let it keep running before I start trying to skip ahead. But this is, this is just one of those things, and I'm not trying to be.
If you need me to build any foundation, I can do that.
I'm not trying to be hyperbolic about it, but you do not see this. This is, again, they have not disclosed the reason for it. I'm sure there were hearings, in chambers and perhaps, ex parte with the defense and the judge to let them know that they intended to do this. Maybe not. I mean, when you usually it's kind of code, my client intends to testify in the narrative. It's understood. The reason for that, again, never explained to the jurors, and it never should be, but you can tell why now this defense. Yeah, I feel bad for this defense attorney at this point that he's had to sit through dealing with this guy for this long.
So then,
Very soon, we're going to lay some foundation.
yeah, of course, absolutely, Your Honor. And again, this goes to the theory of my case, right? Somebody framed me for this, and I believe that it's compass realty, and I believe that it's for the work that I've done against them. And this document here shows the start of the work that I began against them. You're going to hear much more about the things that I did and the things that they did. And so, again, this spreadsheet, I think really, it's the beginning. And so,
Yeah, that's the way to convince the jurors. Give them a spreadsheet.
Is there any further objection?
I'll stand by my prior argument.
It's admitted.
So when you view this exhibit, or X2, you'll see that there's a spreadsheet attached to it. And I just want to go over a few of the cases with you. And well, generally, first I'll tell you that, again, it was about 60 cases. And let's see here. And there was, for about 60 cases, there's about a $6 million difference.
How come
between
and
and this is
legally
total,
go on
not
with this
each, but,
bypass?
obviously.
It's a good point.
Those cases,
I mean,
about a $6
Mark,
million total between the time that the estate sold the
I
property.
think the judge
the
is going
time
to
that
give
the
him a
person who
very, very
purchased it
long leash,
sold it to
but at a
another
certain
person.
point it becomes,
Right?
just
So
irrelevant.
that's quite a bit of money for that.
The
I'd say that
prosecution, I think,
originally,
are doing a
the
good job of
estate
just sitting
in
and
total
allowing
sold
this
the
to happen.
properties for
Because quite
8.5
frankly,
million.
he's doing
And later,
as
the
good a job
people
as
who
they
sold
have
it
been
after,
in
they
convicting
sold it for
himself.
about 14.5 million. Right. So when you're talking about 8.5 million,
Again, I keep on thinking
6
about
million,
what a
it's
serious
nearly
moment
double,
in these jurors'
right,
lives.
from one
He's
sale
sitting there
to the next sale.
and thinking
And if you look at some of the homes
they
on
have to
here,
make
you'll
this
see,
incredibly
for example, there's
profound
this one
decision
Prince
about
Hamabadi. So the
a
deceased
man
Hamabadi Prince.
losing his life and whether or not to
The
hold another man
The
responsible
state
for that who
sold
may go to
the
prison
home
for the rest
on
of
December
their life.
31st of
And
2018
then
for $232,000.
this clown
And
gets up and starts
the next
walking him
sale
through a spreadsheet.
was done the same day. So the person who bought it resold it the same day for $50,000 more. Now, as administrators have a fiduciary duty to get the maximum value that they can for the estate. When I see a situation, and again, this is the most extreme one. I mean, I'm not saying that all of them are like this, but all of them are. There's a significant difference between the one price and the other price. But this is just the most extreme one. Is for someone to be able to resell a property the same day for $50,000 more, it's just not right. So, and again, you'll see that. Again, anywhere from 30 to 50% between the two sales when you review this exhibit.
When you review, nobody's
and so
looking at that exhibit, dude.
It's floored, right? To see that this is going on. And immediately, all I knew was that there was something funny going on here. And what troubled me too is that the prior public administrator said, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm not going to do anything about it. Throw them in the trash. And I think that disturbs me because that's really the role of the Clark County public administrator, right? I think Compass Realty has made this argument that, that's not the jurisdiction of the public administrator. But if you think about it, whether
Clever girl,
we're trying to secure property so some
I mean,
can't
his
jump through the
attorney
window
might
and
have,
steal everything
but
in the
again,
house,
if his
or
attorney
trying to
is
stop
just
somebody
saying
from
this is a lie,
stealing
or I
equipment,
don't agree
I
with
believe
what
it's the
you're
same thing.
doing here,
And so that's,
I
I
he
absolutely
may have
disagree with
looked
Dr.
at it to make sure that he's
So
not
we've got a duty to protect these estates,
committing
right? Whether it's
further crimes
again
beyond
stopping
perjury,
criminals
or
from getting into the
that
houses and
nothing
stealing
he's
stuff,
saying is
or
so
unscrupulous real
contradicted
estate
by
agents
what
from
they've already presented
trying
in
to
their case.
work
But
the system.
for the most part, I think this guy
So I started to
is
object to all of these petitions.
off on
And-
his own here.
And as I told you before, it was the probate commissioner who told me, look, I need to start looking at this. This doesn't seem right. And I asked him, I said, well, why can't you stop these? I mean, not that I was saying I don't want to do it, but out of curiosity, why can't you? And he told me that the law, and so I'll tell you right now that, sorry, just going backwards a bit, I think now is a good time to talk about this independent administration. So independent administration is not a generally used form of.
This is narcissism. This is a man who's got a captive audience. He's got 12 people. This is the last time in the world he will have 12 people who have to sit there and listen to him, and he's going to take advantage of it. This is entirely this man's ego. And I said this before, not to pat myself on the back, but I called this the type of person who everything we had known about him leading up to this, everything we knew about the defense he was going to put on, I was for sure he was going to testify. The only part of that bet that I didn't win was the idea that he was going to testify in the narrative like this, because this is just absolutely it's fascinating to watch in the sense that a train wreck in slow motion is still fascinating to watch, but more than anything, what's coming through to me is that this man loves himself so much, loves the sound of his voice so much, that he's willing to waste these jurors' times on these other unrelated issues, and mainly because he just enjoys that he's got 12 people and a camera focused on him, and that they can't do anything about it. His attorney's hiding under the table. Yeah, his attorney, you know what? I think his attorney just, honestly, after he said our next witness is Robert Tellis, took a deep breath and a sigh and said, I'm going to sit down and thank God I can wipe my hands clean of this thing again. I believe you said you would eat a shoe. I did say I would eat a shoe. So now I can avoid that.
Probate. It's rarely used. What independent administration allows somebody to do is to sell houses without going through the regular court process. You basically circumvent the whole process. And so the reason that I didn't, really look into it is I never had a need to use it. Because normally during the probate process, when somebody's selling a house, you've got to ask the court for permission. You give everybody notice. And you allow, when you do this, for the estate to get the best value. Because what happens is all of
Jody,
these folks out there who are interested in
the
buying
answer
and
is
flipping
yes,
properties, whatever,
but
they
it's going to
scour
be at
all
a
of these
point
listings. So if you ever go to
where
probate
it
court on
seems
Friday, you'll see
extreme.
that, they're real estate investors just all over the place, right? But so by publishing it, you ensure that you're going to get the best value possible. These people are watching and they say, oh, you know what? Maybe there's an extra 20 grand I can squeeze out of that. I'm going to get in there and I'm going to go after it, right? And so like I said, it's good for the families. So, and it's transparent. So when somebody uses this Independent Administration Act, and they're a corporate probate administrator, that's concerning. Because basically what they're trying to say is, well, I want to sell this property out of this estate, but I don't want it to go through the regular process. I want to be able to sell it to this guy at this price, and that's it. And when they would use this type of law, the law says that if nobody objects, then the probate commissioner has to grant the petition. Right? So his hands were tied. So one of the things I did do later was I actually went to the legislature and raised my concerns. And there were folks in the legislature that agreed. And so we were able to change the laws so that I had greater watchdog capabilities in these situations, which I think only made this situation more dire for certain folks. And again, I'll get further into that. But so, I began to go ahead and file objections to
every time he says I'll get further into that, or we'll get into that more later. It scares me to death that how long he expects this thing to go on.
And the probate commissioner pretty much granted my objections just about every time, because in the regular law, again, not independent administration, just generally, the public administrator has higher priority than all other people, except for family, right? And we would never step in the way of family. Family member wants to handle the estate, great. If we're in the middle of getting ready to handle a probate estate, and I'm sorry, I know I'm talking as though I'm still there, but I think for the purposes of what I'm sharing with you, I'm just going to continue to do that. We would say, okay, you know what, great. Maybe we have this fee or that fee that you got to pay. Could be a couple $100, but we don't want to. We're not here to take away anything from you. Happy to transfer it, right? And we got to, per the county's codes, or we've got.
If I were on the jury, I would just be asking for the verdict.
We're going to waive it. You can go. But like I said, it was never any like real burden
You can
to pay.
keep talking, sir. We just want to take a look at the
over,
forms,
especially when they're done liquidating. They're looking at thousands of dollars in the family's pocket. But again, it's their money, right? But when it came to, again, third-party administrators, if I saw that there was something strange going on, I stepped in. Now, if there's a third-party administrator who was, when I reviewed the petition, appeared to be above board, wasn't doing anything fishy, I didn't get involved, right? If they were utilizing the regular court process, they weren't, again, trying to hide anything, then great, more power to you. But so the one company that was doing this over and over again, more than anybody else, was Compass Realty, and they were doing it through Thomas Moore. And so anytime one of Thomas Moore's petitions came through, the probate commissioner said, you've got to give it to the public administrator's office. And I think that's where that whole thing started way back, right? So as they were, as I was going at this and filing objections, they started to fight back in various ways. First, they started to threaten to sue me. They said, well, you're messing with our business, right? And I wasn't afraid of them because, what they were doing was not right. They started making complaints to my assistant county manager, or county management, trying to get my assistant county manager to stop me. And we had meetings, he and I said, this is not okay. I'm not gonna. I can't agree to that. No, So, despite their complaints over and over again in the county, my assistant county manager said, I can't do anything. He's the guy in charge. Sorry. Then they started filing these false claims about me in court pleadings, saying that I was trying to steal their business, that I was trying to steal it for myself. Now, at the time I was a salaried employee. Like some of the smaller counties, they have a setup where the public administrators, all they earn is a commission based on the estates they put through.
So, if I'm following his theory here, because he's such a fantastic administrator and does his job so incredibly well, he pissed off another company, and that company, because they got upset with him doing his job and hassling them and causing them some trouble, they took it upon themselves to what? have an investigative reporter killed and then frame Tellez for it. So this diabolical company willing to murder and set up someone for murder, first of all, wanted to skip a step from actually murdering him, the cause of all of their pain, instead decide to murder an innocent person and then set him up so that he would be framed and that would solve all their problems. Jay says, the question I have is, how does a person become like this? Just complete and utter lack of self-awareness. It's insane. Well, he is insane. I think that's the answer, is that these people walk amongst us. That's the scary part about it. And they are just so completely living in their own world where they are the center of their own world. And, thank God all of them don't become murderers. But when they do, this is exactly what you get. I mean, it's just, like I said, what he's saying is not fascinating as much as the way he's doing it and what he actually wants these jurors to believe. This is a man, by the way, who I fully believe feels he's killing it right now, and that he is convincing these jurors of how innocent he is. I'm waiting for him to scold the jury. I agree with you, Amanda. I'm waiting for him to ask the judge to make sure that juror number 13 wakes up. And the fact that he said, hey, you'll notice this when you get the exhibits back in court. Nobody is looking at your exhibits, dude. They're just trying to get through this whole thing. And they're quite frankly a little upset that this didn't pay off to be as exciting as they thought it was going to be. He is living in his own delusion. You're absolutely right. I'm going to try to get us through this whole thing.
The process. Okay, but not so with Clark County. With Clark County, you get a paycheck and that's it. So I never received a commission off of any of the states that we administered, ever. So to say that, I was trying to do this to get something out of it was just false. Again, just trying to sling mud to see if they couldn't scare me off or do it. I don't know. Then in early 2022, about March 2022, I approached Steve Wolfson. Now, he and I and other elected department heads, we would have regular meetings and we would coordinate and, elections were around the corner, so we started talking about, what ideas do you have? What ideas do you have? That type of thing, right? And during one of our meetings, I mentioned that I had this concern with this company. About a year before, I had raised the issue with the Attorney General's office, and apparently they didn't see where the wrong was. But the weird thing about that was that they took less than a month for the investigation. And so I don't know.
Cross is going to be fired.
Attorney General
but what are they going to cross him?
We don't get it. We don't see how this
intricacies of
or what,
administrative probate
I
law.
think about a month later, Comps Realty had a letter in hand saying that they didn't see any wrongdoing. Like I said, to me, that was just weird. And again, I will get into why this is not just about mail. I think Detective Jaffe said, "Oh, this is about mailings." No, it's way worse than that, in my opinion. So I told Mr. Wolfson about the situation. You've got these guys who are again from one sale to the next. I mean, we're looking at anywhere again close to 50%. He's like, well, okay. He's like, and I asked him, can you do an investigation? He said, well, that's not our department. I mean, we don't do investigations. Because I thought, well, the AG does investigations. Maybe the DA does too. He said, no, we don't do that. But I know someone who can help you. There's this guy I know in public corruption, Derek Jett, and I'll put you in touch with him. Mr. Jaffe, I don't know if it was a day or two later, calls me. We discuss the case on the phone. We set up a meeting. I go down there with a package with all of my materials. And I actually included a letter to him with that. A letter in that kind of highlighted some of the concerns. And so I'd like to share J1. So there's a letter to Detective Jaffe.
Oh boy. This is one of those days as a prosecutor, you just feel like the wheels have come off. I didn't mute it. I think they've got it muted in court while they're talking at sidebar, but this is just fantastic to watch. I mean, again,
Jay wanted to admit it.
To me, it's insulting to the jury at
So
this point. At this
one of
point,
the things that I
you'd
noted
almost
in
expect
this
that
letter,
they'd
and
be
again, it's a
taking
4-page
offense
letter,
by
I
it.
started getting into detail about what had been going on and what, well, I guess you'll see it. But one of the issues I noted was this estate of
Patty,
James Clark.
the judge really has
I noted that
has
in
to
this
allow him.
case, we found that Thomas Moore had removed everything from the kitchen before any sale of the home. Removing the kitchen, and of course, this also involved the flooring, but it didn't say that here, but removing the kitchen before the sale would devalue the property in a way that would allow Moore to get a lower appraisal value before making the sale. There are photos that we took on 5/1/2019 showing that the kitchen was in place at the time that the decedent died. So what had happened was that we had taken over because family wasn't found. Family came in, they took over, but apparently something happened where they couldn't administer it. In the meantime, Thomas Moore stepped in. So we came into the picture, got out of the picture, family stepped in, then Thomas Moore stepped in because I think a notice of default was filed with the recorder's office because the mortgage had gone into arrears. And so maybe I'll explain that just a little bit. So when somebody dies, oftentimes
No
the
thanks.
way that
No, thank you.
these private administrators get word, I mean, and I think these guys have a different method, but one of the ways that they typically do is they watch for these public notices that the homes have gone into default because the mortgages have lapsed. Like somebody stopped paying the mortgage, right? And so now at this point, the mortgage company is getting ready to do a foreclosure.
Here's the other thing. I think he's one of those people who is part of his narcissism is the inability to pick up on social cues. He's looking right at 12 jurors. I cannot imagine that he's getting 12 sets of eyes staring back him with rapt enthusiasm for everything that he's talking about. But you would think from the way that he's behaving that they are hanging on his every word. I mean, perhaps they are in just being, in shock that this is what this guy prepared. But he really feels the way that he's speaking to me is behaving as if a man who feels like what he is saying is incredibly interesting to his audience. Why did he stop being pro se? You can tell that that's what he really wants. I don't know. It could be a function of he wasn't getting enough library time in prison and thought that the only way that he's going to get an adequate access to the things he needs to do for a defense is to hire an attorney. But it was obvious that attorney was, fighting with one arm tied behind his back, and then, had to allow his client. I mean, what is this attorney going to get up and say in closing statements after listening to this hot mess? Any chance the probate stuff would be considered character evidence, opening the door for prosecutors to go there? I suppose they could try to impeach him on some of what he's saying here. If I'm the prosecutor, though, I don't touch this. If anything, if I'm feeling especially sassy that day, I might point out, sir, you just spoke from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. about probate. Do you want to tell us how your DNA ended up under the victim's fingernail? Let's get into that a little bit. I mean, that might be the only kind of, depending on how much coffee I had in me over lunch, question I might be asking when it came to the probate stuff.
Right. So they do this. Thank you, sir. Oh, sorry. They do this notice of intent to default, right? And this is the signal to some of these folks. Okay, well, I should go check this out and see why this is.
Think about that. The entire time he's talking,
anybody's home.
The entire time this man is talking, they are thinking about your DNA is under the victim's fingerprints. Just think about that. That is probably running on a loop in their heads as they're hearing about the ins and outs of the fascinating probate code in Nevada.
Look through the window, see if it looks like it's lived in. Then they might do more research and try to find out who it was that was there and whether they died or not. Right. So then based on that, they'll file a petition in court to take over, to get this administration so they could sell the real property. So when they had taken control of this property from that point to the point that family notified us again that, this estate had been taken from them, we stepped in. I filed an objection. We got into the house and found out that Thomas Moore had ripped out the flooring in the kitchen before a sale that he was preparing for. And so that was in this first note to Detective Chappie. Early on, this was March 6th of 2022, that I raised that particular concern with Detective Chappie. But so about 2 weeks later, Detective Jappy told me, hey, you know what? Excuse me. Well, I learned from Detective Jappy that they discovered that Compass Realty or Thomas More, they were not reporting on the closing documents for like the estates, any personal property at all. So, when somebody dies and they have a house, you've got stuff in the house, right? Given that Vegas is a commuter city, most people have a car, right? At least one car. So, for someone to die with a house, but zero property of any value inside the house or any car, Detective Jappy thought that was really odd. He's like, there's something wrong here. So we're going to, it is my understanding that they were going to go ahead and do stakeouts. I don't know if this is supposed to be with some type of static car that just sits there empty with a video camera, but basically my understanding is they were going to do observation on some of these homes when they still had property inside them, vehicles in front of them, and see what exactly happened with all that stuff. Because again, if you've got a house that's worth $500,000, you should probably have property inside the house that's kind of commensurate with that, right? You might have $5,000, $10,000 worth of property that can be sold.
You know what's amazing about this too is if it's hard to make yourself more unlikable when you're already accused of murder, and he's managing to make himself more unlikable just by being him and feeling that this is somehow important to the jurors. Again, it's just so insulting to these 12 people taking time out of their lives to decide this man's fate, and he wants to spend that time explaining all of this to them as if they care and as if it's important and as if it has anything to do with why a man lost his life. Bevaboo, I have all kinds of questions about his testimony. For example, why would Compass frame him for a murder when they could just murder him? That's exactly what I said. These people are so evil and so nefarious that they came up with this elaborate scheme to bother a man who's just causing them some litigation issues, by the way, as if companies don't deal with that all the time, always. But instead of killing the person, they're willing to commit murder. They just don't think it's a little too cute to murder the actual person who's the problem. Just absolutely fascinating.
For the public administrator's office, oftentimes there was personal property to be sold, recovered and sold in apartments, right? I mean, there's very, very often stuff that's worth, at least $3,000, $4,000, right? And it's the probate administrator's duty, whether you're the public administrator or a private administrator, to ensure that those items are sold and the benefit is provided to the estate, right? So when, these guys have done hundreds of estates and no personal property has been reported and no vehicles have been reported, it seemed that was a concern for Mr. Jappy. But after that, I really didn't hear much more. And understand that he said that he and I were buddies and we talked often, but that wasn't the case. That was kind of strange. I never considered him like a friend per se. Not that I'm, trying to say about that, but for him to say that he thought we were good friends, I couldn't understand how you'd characterize it that way. I guess when he was claiming that, we'll get to the ambulance situation later. But so he said, again, we're going to do these things and then we're going to do title research, and again, still, I didn't hear anything about the concerns with the James Clark situation or even the Reggie Abdul situation. And then I'll get into that situation here in a little bit. But that same month.
Yeah. So the state didn't agree to this, and the judge he's entitled to do this. I mean, you have a constitutional right to take the stand in your own behalf. And the problem is when you got a situation like this where somebody is it's not a problem for the prosecution if they're going to lie. The prosecution welcomes it and expects it. It's a problem for the defense when the attorney knows that it's going to be a lie. That's an important point too, is if he knows that what he's going to say is going to be lying, then by leading him through questioning, there's an ethical question there about whether or not he's supporting perjury. So they allow for this type of situation, but you're right. The judge can't stop it. The prosecution didn't sign off on it. I'm sure nobody in that room is enjoying it. Mr. Tellis is, because he gets to hear himself speak. But they all kind of just have to let this whole circus play itself out so that they can protect his constitutional rights. A judge will put an end to it, though, if it starts to get just way too far afield. And the prosecution can start making objections based upon relevance and, but again, if his defense is, I've been framed by this other company and the judge is allowing that defense in, he kind of has a lot of latitude. Girl Ryan, by the way, my daughter's name is Ryan, says, I feel like these poor jurors will have earned their right to speak at sentencing and give their own victim impact statements. I think these poor jurors should sue the man for the intentional infliction of emotional distress he's put them through by making them sit there and listen to this.
Rita Reed, my assistant public administrator, who's now the current public administrator, she filed for the position. And also a Compass Realty realtor filed to run for the position as well. So again, to this point, Compass Realty seems like doing everything they could to try to stop me, even running one of their own employees to try to take the seat from me.
It's also like, I know we're watching this late, but at 4 p.m., they got to be looking at the clock too. Like, can we just cut this early for today?
I guess I'm not sure how the conversation went or how this interaction went between Rita Reed and one of the folks from Compass Realty, but Rita Reed, for her campaign, received $10,000. $10,000 from, $5,000 from Adam Fenn and $5,000 from Compass Realty. And I would like to, if I could, share L1.
The fact that he had exhibits prepared just continues to blow my mind. Not crime scene photographs, by the way, right? Spreadsheets he's having them pull up. Again, I really don't think we're watching a person trying to flim-flam. I think it's a person who really feels the jurors are into this and interested in and hanging on his every
word. The document here again is Rita Reed's campaign contribution report from the Nevada Secretary of State. And I'm turning to... Oh. You know what? I think we might have to admit a different exhibit for another day. My apologies, but this is report number 1, and the contributions from Compass Realty and Adam Fenn are on report number 2. So my apologies. So
that's just not the document you want.
That's correct. So if you would note that we're going to be looking at, when I bring that back tomorrow, we'll be looking at report number 2 that has those contributions. So
you imagine being this guy's employee when he was explaining how there's a new rule about how they can't talk to each other, by the way, a thing he actually did. When you were wondering what is the kind of boss that makes a rule about no communications between employees, this is this guy. This is the guy that does that. This is the guy that every Friday afternoon before a holiday weekend sets a office-wide meeting in the conference room to talk about his various grievances with everyone. Who was it that cooked fish in the microwave, and who was parking in their wrong allocated spot in the parking lot? This is that guy. This is that guy who's so in love with himself and his own rules and hearing his own voice. And now you've just told this guy that he's got a constitutional right to sit there and have 12 people listen to him. It's just next level narcissism.
I guess after this happens, about 2 weeks later, Mr. Gurman's article, his first article, comes out. And I think we had those text messages from me from the day that I saw the article, where I was upset. And I think anybody who is the subject of an article that says certain things about you, could reasonably feel
worse than the teacher is the student who tells the teacher they forgot about the homework.
That same demeanor from that day is not exhibited in any of my tweets later. And again, we'll go over that later. But so the articles come out and all that, and Rita Reed, and I'll show you in the campaign report, or you'll be able to review the campaign report. She didn't get too many contributions other than this $10,000 from Adam Fenn and Compass Realty. She ended up running 2 different text message campaigns, publicizing to voters the articles. right? And that costs about, I think, $9,000 or so. That'll be on later campaign reports how much was spent. So you'll see that this $10,000 that was given by the Compass Realty and Ben
I don't know.
went directly to this
I don't know
campaign.
if that
And it lost the primary.
we all
You know,
have to suffer through
was
it, I guess. Thank you,
It was a
though.
bummer. I mean, sorry, I don't know what, it was unfortunate. But I continued to fight against Compass Realty. And I think that's something that they didn't expect. Right? And I did it just because I thought it was the right thing to do. Right? I didn't, I could have just gone home and put up my feet and done no work at all anymore. But I continued that particular battle. I had nothing to gain from it because, in 7 months I was out anyway. Right? So there was nothing for me to gain other than just doing what doing the job. Right. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's a state of Rajab Abdul where we got some headway on something. I had been discussing with one of the heirs what Compass Realty was doing in that case. And so we were, she was concerned and she asked us to intervene. So I filed a petition and we had a hearing, I believe it was on June 29th of 2022. And I'd like to see if we could play the hearing video from that hearing. And
This is something I would object to. Hearing this hearing has nothing to do with nothing. I mean, if you're the prosecutor, you're one, not trying to trample on this man's rights so that you don't create any problems on appeal. You're also letting him say whatever he has to say so that you can force it all back down his throat when you cross-examine him. But starting to play hearing video and everything else is a bridge too far for me. If I were a prosecutor, I'd say, come on, enough's enough here. Have him, wrap it up, fella. You've made your point about, the admirable job that you were doing and how that caused another company to not murder you, but murder someone else. But I'm not going to start letting you play videotape from something that has nothing to do with the death of this poor man. The prosecution going to roll out the red tape for Tellez when he returns to the stand tomorrow. Keep going. Yeah. They're going to, it's funny. I wonder how I would feel as the prosecutor, because usually you're taking furious notes when the defendant is testifying because you're trying to remember every little lie and way that you're going to trap them and corner them and expose everything. What do you do with this, though? I mean,
The
this
district
guy
attorney
is...
wants an opportunity to review it, and so I'm going to reserve on that. And you can probably talk about it maybe tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Boy, babe.
I'd like to have the jury see that video. I guess I'd like to go ahead and then, if I may, share the Rajab Abdul inventory. And that is, M1, sorry.
It's almost more insulting, too, that he started out by denying the murder. I had nothing to do with this man's murder. So I grew up in
the state of
small
Rajab
town
Abdul,
outside of
filed objection.
Cleveland and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was like it immediately, he was so bothered that he even had to address that it got in the way of him explaining the guy sounds like he's running for re-election. He does not sound like he's trying to defend himself from murder.
On the ammo, or is that? This right now has been admitted. Okay, is it possible
So
to put it
M1 is admitted.
on the ammo?
Court's permission after he explains it, I went put it on.
Sure, no problem.
So again, so basically when somebody's doing a probate case, by the end of the case, they've got to report everything that was found on the date of death of the person. If they have a house, they put that, they put the house on the appraisal, on the inventory, and they attach an appraisal.
I have prosecuted cases where I was very excited to cross-examine someone. Never had a guy like this, though. This is just bonkers to me, because usually I've absolutely cross-examined narcissists and people who are full of themselves and think that they're fooling everyone in the room, but they usually talked about the crime itself. This guy has gone, so far afield of what we're actually all sitting here for that it's like, what do you even cross-examine him on? That's why I honestly believe I would make a point of explaining that to the jurors. If that point hasn't already been driven home to them, which I'm sure it has, I would start up my cross-examination with, you spent, however long this 2 hours and 52 minutes explaining to us, sir, all about probate code and your job. I would like to know how your DNA ended up under the fingernail of Mr. Gehrman. Could you explain that to us? What does probate code have to do with that? I mean, and just get it. I feel like this is one of those guys you can get nasty with. Do you feel that is comforting to his family to know about the probate code when your DNA is under his fingerprint? Just let loose. Who cares if you start getting objected to at that point? This guy's given you permission to be a jerk to him.
For the house, vehicles, they'll list vehicles, bank accounts. If there's personal property, they'll appraise the property.
Great
That'll be listed
question,
on the inventory.
Tracy.
So I have here the inventory that
Why
was filed
not?
by Cynthia Sauerland, who was the probate administrator for this
The
case.
wheels have come off so
who
much.
ended up taking over for Thomas Moore. So he had been the administrator for them for some time, and then she stepped in and continued their practices for them. As it turns out, she was also a real estate agent for them, whereas
Thank you,
I don't think
Christina.
Thomas Moore
Appreciate that.
was both an agent and the administrator. But there's the appraisal attached to this was something that was of concern to the heirs, and that I found concerning as well. And Mr. Eswich, do you mind?
Is there a particular page?
And unfortunately, on the appraisal, they didn't mark the pages, but I guess, you can see, I don't know why the appraiser didn't actually do page numbers on his appraisal, but it would be certainly this page. I'd like
That's
to
right,
show
man. I'm getting
that
heated.
And that, and then the
Come
following
on.
page. Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir. And so when you do an inventory, it's supposed to be the state of, yes, sir.
Can you see that?
This is supposed to be the state of the home on the date of the person's death. So when you see here, the appraisal that they've got for their inventory shows a kitchen that has no cabinets, I hope you can see that. If not, certainly when you read the exhibit later, you'll see there are no cabinets, no sink, no counter. It's the bare walls in the kitchen. And the floor is missing.
Does he think they'll be shocked by this? Does he think they will be so shocked by what he's telling them right now that they're going to acquit this man? Like, I really feel that the prosecutor, this might be the point where they need to start stepping in, because, it's one thing to say there was animus between me and a company, and that company had every reason in the world to try to frame me for something really awful that I didn't do. Fine. But what are we looking at blueprints and schematics for? I mean, it's pushing the limits of how much a person should get away with, because quite frankly, at this point, it's just an exercise in this man's ego rather than a trial.
So you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner, same thing. The picture's not great, but you'll see the floor is missing there too. And sir, may we go to the next page? And in the hallway, missing flooring. In the bedroom, missing flooring.
Shocking.
And so it costs money to do this process, right? To rip these things out. So it's interesting that, I guess, I'm not
Thank you, NH6 Central.
The fact that they didn't show that they paid for these services, to me, seems strange. But this is apparently what they were claiming as how they found the home. And thank you, sir, very much. Thank you. And you'll find that, again, like I said before, James Clark was in a similar condition. So, and later, after this property, I'm sorry, I'm fidgeting. Later, when this property was resold, it was sold by and I'm sorry, like I said, I'm a little nervous, but if you look at that appraisal, you'll see that the appraiser said that he believed that it would take about $20,000 in repair costs to bring the home up to fair market value. It was about 3 months later that the buyer resold the home for $70,000. So as far as I'm concerned, that extra $50,000 should have gone to the family not these
Oh,
other guys.
so benevolent of you.
Right there, I thought, when somebody is ripping property out of a house to sell it to another individual with whom they've had these purchases or these transactions over and over again, that should be looked into seriously, because to me, I believe that's theft, right? I mean, it makes no sense otherwise. So, an interesting thing. I wrote Jappy an email after the hearing that we had, and I really want you guys to see, want you folks to see the hearing, because I think it certainly put Compass Realty on notice. The judge was very concerned, and so you'll see that tomorrow, I hope. Jappy, actually, I ended up, it was that same day, I believe, writing Detective Jappy an email saying that we went to court and there were these issues with this house as well, just like with James Clark. I don't know that I said that as like James Clark, but I certainly noticed those issues. May I share V2?
Is there any time limit for him to be up there, or can he speak for a week if he wanted to? The answer is that there's no like time limit on the books, like a statute. And he would probably be allowed to speak up there for a very long time if he were talking about something relevant and pertinent to why we're here for. I think if anything, the judge is going to stop this and put an end to it. If the judge does, we're late in the day, and so the judge is probably going to let him go through the end of the day for sure. But I imagine that she's going to have a little conversation with his attorney about let's keep this on point and wrap it up tomorrow, because she's not going to just let him continue to ramble on about different probate cases. But the answer is, if he were talking about, in cases where it's relevant, sometimes you have witnesses who are on the stand for several days, but not this joker. This is just again, it's just, this is the person who conducted the meetings on a Friday afternoon, and those meetings went long because he really liked to hear everything he had to say. I'm enjoying Josh's spiciness. Well, I'm glad I could please. Thank you, Ms. LT.
This is an email from me to Detective Jappy. I can't recall the date, but it was in regard to the estate of Rajab Abdul.
It's making me think too that how little of this he may have run by his attorney if they're having such trouble with the exhibits, because you would think if he had, a lot of this would have been prepared and litigated ahead of time, and he might have been able to, have that all ready to go. But I just think that he's been huddled over his notebook for the last several months in his cell, coming up with these, this fascinating case he was going to present to the jurors.
So this is actually to Derek Jappy and one of the other folks that was on his detail. This is hello, gentlemen. I'm not sure if you all had a chance to catch the hearing. I will get the video for you. Also, I'm not sure if you had a chance to read the response. It had an appraisal with the kitchen torn out. Today, Deborah Erbach testified that the photos of the house in the appraisal were not representative of how she had left the house. She had cleaned the house before she had returned home. She said, and again, I'm sorry that, this is hearsay, but also the kitchen was intact when she left the home. It seems that the kitchen in this case was also potentially ripped out to reduce the value of the real property before the appraisal. So Detective Jappy was on notice of this concern as well, But and so despite all that, Detective Jappy, I'll tell you that at a certain point, I was, during the course of this case, you probably were aware that you may be aware that I was representing myself, and I was fighting for certain evidence. And
now
I requested the case file for the case that Detective Jappy had built against me. When they gave me that case file, they also gave me the case file against Compass Realty as well. And so I was able to observe what was done in the investigation. So despite the fact that Detective Jappy had said that there would be these stakeouts, there were no stakeouts. There were no vehicle title searches to see what was going on with these vehicles. Despite the fact that I raised concerns about what we found in the appraisals, at least the one appraisal, Detective Jappy didn't seek appraisals from any of the other cases. right? So it seemed odd to me that he would get up here and say that this was all about mail, right? He said, "Oh, well, this is just."
Objection, this stays the testimony.
Sustained.
Yeah, I guess, I can't recall what the to my knowledge, the issue that was raised, according to Detective Jeffrey, was that this was about certified mailing. I can't recall what the other issue was.
Objection, his opinion is proper.
The objection sustained.
So, But I guess you can go
Look at
back
him.
to your
Look at him.
notes
Look
and
at him
see what
start to
Detective Jeffrey
lose
said,
it when he gets
see
questioned,
what this was about.
challenged.
Because that's, in my opinion, that's clearly not what this was about.
Objection.
This is my opinion. Okay. So personally, I believe it's likely that, based on what I'm going to discuss later about what Detective Jeffy did, I believe there's some type of compensation to him for all this.
Objection, this argument
So-
is the proper opinion.
I'm a
I would
witness.
just ask you to move on.
Sure, absolutely. And again, like I said before, I can have my opinions, right? And it's up to you to decide. I'm not the lawyer up here.
Approach on this?
Uh-huh.
What a little twerp. It's amazing to me. This guy is so motivated by his own ego and status and reputation. And thank you so much, Jody. But the part that gets him heated is when he gets challenged in court, when he gets objected to. You're on trial for murder and you haven't talked about the murder. That doesn't bother you. Unfazed by the fact that he's on trial for murder. More bothered by the fact that he's being challenged and objections are being sustained when he wants to be speaking. This guy, during those Friday afternoon meetings when he kept everybody late at work, you sure as hell did not interrupt him as well.
To your personal knowledge
This
and
guy
facts,
does
but
not
your opinions are
tolerate
really
any
relevant. And so I would ask you, your personal knowledge and
challenge to
things that
him.
you observe, and any inferences and arguments that can be made, your attorneys will be able to make those at the end.
And if Your Honor, if you don't mind, for clarification's sake, again, when Zach Schilling was giving his opinion
It's not
about
appropriate,
circumstances.
But if you want to have a hearing at the end of the day, that's fine too. But again, I would just ask that you limit it to the facts and your personal knowledge and any of your observations.
So if I have a particular opinion on some of the testimony, can I share that?
Your opinions are not relevant at this time. So again, I would ask you to limit your testimony to facts and observations that you make.
And then according to the judge's counsel, those are matters that can be argued close.
That was fantastic. Well, folks,
The attorney for Compass Realty began to stonewall me after the hearing, because what happened during the hearing is that I was granted this authority to engage in investigations against them. The judge, you'll see what the judge decided about the situation. Yeah, I think that they had a lot to worry about. And that was June 29th that hearing occurred. So, but after that hearing, there still has to be a paper order that is entered, that is filed in order to grant the power that was actually given during the hearing, right? So you got to have that written order in hand in order to act. I had to basically, as part of the process, you have to send the order to the other attorney, and you all have to try to agree to the terms of the order, and
100% right.
both sides sign it if they agree upon it. The attorney for Compass Realty just would not, and things got delayed. And then finally, the order got filed. It was on, I believe, August 29th. My apologies, but I do have the order that I drafted in the estate of Rajab Abdul that I'd like to share as N1.
And is Nancy?
N as in Nancy.
Where's the minutes?
I mean, it's, just from I'm not a, sign, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not, I can't interpret somebody's body language. I'm not a body language expert, but I am a human being that's walked this earth for a good many years, and just, I'm fascinated by even just the way he carries himself is as if he feels he's the most important person,
My
not only
apologies.
in the
It
room,
was
but on
actually
earth.
filed on August 31st, 2022. And as you all know, Mr. Gurman was murdered on September 2nd, 2022. But I guess well, I also want to mention at the same time that I was fighting Compass Realty in probate court, and also beyond trying to work with Detective Jaffe on that criminal investigation. I'd also filed a complaint with the Nevada Real Estate Division as well. And I raised the issues that I've discussed already, and also I raised issues about some of the other codes related to real estate that were being broken, because Compass Realty was selling properties to Adam Fenn, one of their own agents, using the same, it appears, using the same scheme.
Not even vague misogyny vibes,
And
Casey.
when Mr. Gurman was murdered, a couple of things happened. One, the new public administrator did not finish acting on any of the investigation in Rajab Abdul. There's been no activity. So any of the investigating that I was going to do is not being done at this point. And the complaint I made with the Nevada Real Estate Division, I got documentation that it closed in
He addressed
November
it for a
of
hot
2022.
second, about 30
and
seconds
so,
in, and then just moved on to
I
what he
believe
feels are
that
the far more important matter.
This was, it'd be quite a coincidence if, the fact that Mr. Gurman was killed and was put on me, that they just had a serendipitous benefit from that all these things that were coming to a head for them, just, it's done. No repercussions.
That's it.
So, that's, I'll leave it to you to think about that.
He
And
doesn't
in early
even believe
August,
it.
and you heard Detective Jaffe saying in early August that Rita Reed and Alicia Goodwin approached him, and that
Good point, Couch Juror. Very, very similar.
after they approached him, that Kimberly McMahon approached him, and you heard that Kimberly McMahon was somebody who worked as a real estate agent for me at the public administrator's office, and she again was a lieutenant in Metro, and that she had raised these allegations of a bribery scheme, and I can't recall the date. I think it was August 7th or so, but and I'm gonna get that information for you here soon. But later, it was August 17th that Detective Jaffe had an interview with Kimberly McMahon at, I guess, the Department of Homeland Security, I believe. And the statement from that is, one, I don't know if we want to do two. I got one document coming right after the other. I don't know. I'd like to try to also, because I would like to show you that, the facts that are embedded within Detective Jaffe's, or I should say the probable cause statements embedded within his statement that don't match up to the statement from her interview. And that's what I would like to share with you. So we'll see if I can get that done. I believe it's 01, and the search one, I believe, I'm working with a grease pen. The writing is kind of thick. I don't know if it's S1. I'm so sorry.
Grease pen. He slipped that in there.
Thank you. No, I'm sorry. It was the search warrant that Detective Jaffe had done.
This kind of phony politeness with everyone too.
Unfortunately, it could be. It could be.
Is it either P2 or Q2?
Just a thoroughly unlikable human being.
If it's by Derek Jaffe, yes, ma'am.
And then he killed someone. They're not going to answer your question, they're not going to just let him go on and on, but they're going to let him go on for a while. I mean, part of that is they want to preserve this for they if there's a conviction, which I think we all kind of know this is leaning towards, they want to preserve this for any kind of appeal. And one of the big ways that you can set up problems on appeal is by not allowing the defendant to have a full throated opportunity to defend themselves. And that includes nonsense like this. So if you've got to sit through, a few hours of him, waxing poetic about how, the intricacies of probate law and how he was really the hero of the people of Nevada, you're going to have to sit through it, if for nothing else but to preserve this for appeal. But he's doing himself no favors. But the problem is that he's such a sociopath, he doesn't realize that. I firmly feel he feels he's knocking this out of the park. He feels that he is so smart and so attentive to detail and did such an incredible job, and pointing that out to the jurors, they will realize that he really feels he's knocking this out of the park. I know what a grease pen is, but what is the significance of him tossing that in? Why is he writing with a grease pen? Because I believe that's all they're provided with when you're in custody, and that he's not given any kind of object that he, like a normal pen where he would be able to remove the metal from it to create a weapon or a lock pick or something. Probably same goes with pencils. They can't exactly have people with sharp pencils sharpening them, so they're given these grease pens to take notes with. And I think he threw that in there to be as another woe is me, folks. How oppressed and awful am I that I've had to deal with these circumstances to defend myself, and also just perhaps even to let them know that he is in custody. I don't know. But I do know that this is all a lot of this stuff that appears to be accidental on his part, I think is fully planned. I mean, he keeps on doing this thing. I'm very nervous.
Okay, so this time,
I don't think he's nervous at all. I don't think he manifests human emotions like we
I think at the
would.
end of the day, after the jury is excused, we can go further into that.
So, Kimberly McMahon had provided again, an interview, and it, I guess I can speak to it. I'm hoping I can speak to my personal knowledge at least on it. I understand that she had alleged that.
Objection, hearsay.
You can't go into any hearsay or what somebody else said.
Okay, well, supposedly I had requested a commission from Kimberly, and
Objection, hearsay?
And I believe he's referring to the testimony that had been elicited from Detective Jaffe in his cross-examination.
Okay, so you can, if that's what you're talking about, you can just offer whatever relevant testimony you have.
so, it was claimed by, that I asked her for commissions and, or for a referral fee, which would have allegedly been in March of 2019. But she ended up making a claim that
Objection, hearsay.
so
She,
she-
I think she said.
so she was interviewed. I guess you can do the math. She was interviewed by Detective Jaffe 3.5 years later on that supposed issue. So, I think that, and also at the time I only had 4 months left on my office, right? So why would, personally, I'm not sure why someone would wait 3.5 years to make a claim.
Improper opinion.
Okay, sure. Okay, Your Honor. That's okay. I'll
It's
just, I'll go
incredible.
on.
The most flustered he gets
Um,
is over these objections that expose that he
So-
doesn't know what he's doing.
Detective Jaffe obtained the search warrant into me, being able to now from that point forward track me starting August 17th. And it seems to, at least until September 7th, right? I had requested all the surveillance logs when I was representing myself. And originally I'd received only 3
Objection,
from that whole time.
objection.
Sure,
I'm not sure why that would be relevant, so I'm going to sustain the relevance objection at this point.
sure. Oh, and I guess this goes to a comment that Detective Jaffe had made, Your Honor. Detective Jaffe had said that they performed.
The objection was
Oh,
sustained.
okay, but
So, but if you
but
want
I,
to take it up at the end of the day, I'm happy to.
oh, I'm sorry, I was just going to explain. Okay, so can I speak about what he had said?
Maybe hearsay.
I mean, as far as okay,
Either
well,
yeah, they're done. They're done. The judge is
I mean, I thought that if it was
sustaining relevance,
testified in court, that
hearsay. We're
I could
done
repeat
now.
his testimony in court. Is that still hearsay?
Well, generally, I don't like witnesses to say, this is what another witness said.
Sure,
I mean,
but
the jury will be the ones to determine what the testimony was, but if you have something to add based on his testimony.
exactly right. So in order to provide context or want to provide next, I just have to remind them of what his testimony was. That's all. Is that
Well,
okay?
that's exactly what I don't allow witnesses to do, is tell the jury what another witness testified to. You could say generally, but it's not appropriate to inform the
See,
jury
the
what another
judge,
witness testified to.
by the way,
Unless you
he's
have a
saying this
transcript
for
of
the
that
juror's
testimony.
benefits as
So
well.
what I'll do then is I will ask if we could share now. So it came to my attention that from reviewing the file into the investigation into Compass Realty, that Cynthia Sauerland was surveilled 2 days in a row. And so hopefully you can remember why that is important. And so I would like to introduce, if I may, M2.
Yeah, I don't know why the sound went out, but he is thoroughly thoroughly most bothered by when he is when his ego is attacked, when his intelligence is put at issue, when a judge points out that he's not as smart as he thinks he is and he's doing things that break the rules. That bothers him more than anything and triggers him more than anything. It's this attack on his, broad sense of being the smartest person in the room. That's what really bothers him the most. I don't know. This might be the end of it. I'm hearing. Do you guys know if this is the actual end of his testimony? Did it end in just this wonderful?
At this time, the objection is going to be sustained. However, if Mr. Draskowitz wants to call Detective Jappy back and go into this, that is fine as well.
Thank you.
And so I've got other items I want to review in advance of certain exhibits to make sure that I can get them in for what occurred on 9/2. I'm going to go ahead and go forward, and then I'll save that discussion for later. So the Sunday after Mr. Gurman was murdered, I learned, and I was shocked. I think that it was unreal. Then the following day, I know there was testimony about. I'd like to see if I know there's been an exhibit that's been admitted, and it's regarding a discussion between me and Roberta Lee. I don't know if we can publish that. That would have been a discussion a text message discussion we had regarding the killer's SUV. It's a state exhibit. Correct.
The killer's SUV. Well, I mean, it's funny because usually I like to, try to add some elements of legal analysis and, trial advocacy and try to give you guys some feedback on, what I think is happening behind the scenes from a legal perspective. But this is just none of that. This is just absolute madness to watch this man who's just so full of himself. His false humility. Yes, that's a perfect way of putting it, Christina. It's this false humility, this fake, phony politeness. It's that person, the person who is the most polite in the room when everybody knows they're a complete jerk. That's this guy. And that's how he's treating the entire court staff in front of this jury, who he would gladly run over any one of these people with his car, but he's being so completely polite while he's here in court. Again, I don't know if we're having trouble with the audio. I haven't touched a thing. Here we go.
We have find that exhibit.
The state's exhibit. Okay. I'll keep looking. All right. Thank you.
So when we were having that conversation, you might have, she had shared a picture of this SUV, and in the picture, in the comment above it, it said something along the lines of the front rims don't match the back rims. And I looked at the picture and I thought, oh, well, you know what? That's okay. That's not, that's clearly not my vehicle.
Not because you knew that you didn't kill anybody, by the way.
That's what I conveyed in the text messages that have been admitted.
The rims are what, the rims are what convinced you.
Correct, which I would think you'd normally call it hearsay, but they've been admitted, so.
Okay.
That was an incredible moment.
For the record, this is
I
safe.
looked at the picture and I saw that the rims didn't match, and I knew it wasn't my car.
I'm sorry, did I?
Not because I didn't kill anybody, and I know that's not my car.
Can I ask you to,
I mean, even putting aside this guy's obvious,
Here, this General Bob Custer, I'm not sure who the gentleman is, but he says that the Las Vegas murder suspect vehicles have a different spoke pattern. Most vehicles have wheels with matching patterns. So when I saw that, okay, well, obviously it's not my car because my rims all match. And so that was the substance
Case
of that
closed.
conversation. But later I thought, well, holy crap. Excuse me. Sorry. Like, my gosh. It still can't be a coincidence that the killer is driving a vehicle that's like mine. So I started to get really scared. Right? It couldn't seem to be any kind of coincidence that this person was driving a vehicle that was just like mine. Thank you, sir. And so I went outside, just double check, make sure I'm not losing my mind. I looking like, okay, well, my rims match. Okay. And so I went ahead and started washing the cars, trying to just take my mind off things. And I watched the 3 cars, but there's been a debate about whether or not law enforcement knew 1 or 3. That is what it is.
yeah, that would be beneath him,
Yep.
Terry.
Then at night,
Or
after dinner, I started making, like cooking for my daughter's
guy who
lunches.
ties a tie knot
My one
like
particular daughter,
that
she,
does not have a car
she
with
won't eat
rims that
like the
don't
school
match.
lunch, or she didn't at the time. So I'd make her chicken fried rice off of like a Google recipe. And I was distracted, I inadvertently cut my finger. And I cut it across the tip of the finger, right? And if you look at the picture, it was, I don't know if we need to bring the picture up or not, but is that something we should do? Or so basically, you'll see that it may be difficult to see, but
Thanks, Tiffany.
the way that I cut it was as I was chopping right across the tip. And so, I don't know what the
I don't mean to
No,
interrupt
sure.
because we do have a photo that just states.
okay, sure, please.
Do you see how he's getting like far less comfortable now that he's actually talking about evidence dealing with the murders? He was laid back and relaxed when he was walking us all through that probate purgatory for 4.5 hours. But now that he's actually talking about the evidence that links him to the crime, he seems a lot more scatterbrained and agitated. He's all bothered. Casey says all he's bothered about is trying to prove his car is not like the killer's, not about being framed or shock horror that he didn't kill a man in broad daylight. Yeah, no, he was able to get some rest that evening when he realized his rims all matched. Therefore, it wasn't his car that had murdered someone. By the way, folks, don't think I've ever had to do that in my entire life. Double check my vehicles or anything else to make sure they weren't implicated in the murders.
And being self-represented, I attempted to seek the surveillance videos that included the video of me washing my car, or videos of me washing my cars. The judge granted the protection of that. However, I never received the videos. And
The objection was sustained.
oh, okay, so
The motion is granted.
I believe the video showed that I didn't have the finger injury. If you think about it, if somebody has a serious finger injury, would they be washing?
I mean, this is okay. He just said argumentative. God, see, I do know what I'm talking about. This is again, like this is supposed to be testimony, not necessarily argument. So him going back through and watching and trying to explain what evidence does or does not show and whether or not you can impeach somebody else. That's argument. Tell your story, dude, if that's what you want to do, but you don't get to go into argument. And just as I was thinking that, it sounds like the prosecutor objected as argumentative. So I can keep my bar card.
I mean, I would not be washing.
Testify about your own
Sure,
experience.
sure, Your Honor. I believe I would not be washing my 3 vehicles if I had a serious finger injury. And as you've probably already gathered, you're going to hear about the fact that I was at the gym at around noon. And
Unless you
I
killed
believe I would
somebody,
not
it
be
covers.
working out with a serious finger injury. I'm sorry, you have that?
Yes, I'm court's permission going to publish. It's exhibit, it's been admitted 185.
So, I mean, it may be tough to see that again. Like I said, it was a lateral cut, or, you know, it went across the tip.
You can see it close up.
Okay, please. So you can see I still have the tip of my finger. You can see it there. I had put super glue on it, and they pulled the super glue plug out of my finger, and so that's, you know, and the reason it's all gunky like that is because, again, the super glue mixed with blood. So thank you, sir. But so when I cut my finger that night, I had used scissors to cut. You know, the super glue bottle had actually, the tip had dried. Sometimes when I have an open super glue bottle, the tip dries and I have to cut the tip. And so I had to grab scissors in order to do that. And I inadvertently left blood on the scissors that I forgot to clean off. But once I cut the tip off the super glue bottle, I super glued the tip of my finger together. I believe my healing process is such that I would not have had such a nasty injury for 5 days. Again, I can't speak to anyone else's healing process, but, you know, that is what it is. I think we're going to discuss the situation of the surveillance log later. Is that right? Okay.
That is correct, based on the
Okay. So you heard that a search warrant was obtained, and I got pulled over early in the morning on September 7th, 2022. The officers came at me with their guns drawn, yelling at me, and I was basically coming from dropping off my stepson at school, getting ready to go home to pick up one of my other daughters and then take her to school. And so they just, I don't know where 3 police cars just run up on me from the back, and I just scared. I had no idea what was going on. I mean, yeah, they basically yell at me to just stand. I can't remember exactly what they said, but, you know, they're yelling at me. They patted me down. They handcuffed me. They threw me in the back of a patrol car. I asked them what I did. I asked them, you know, can I call somebody? Can I do anything? I mean, I did this for over an hour and a half. Just tell me what's going on. Tell me what's, you know, I mean, obviously at this point, I had my suspicions because of like the whole, you know, all that thing.
All that
But
thing. All
they
that
didn't tell me what
thing.
was going on. They just left me there. And the whole time, my family didn't know where I was. As far as I know, my daughter was expecting for me to come home and take her to school. I was distraught already by that point. And I believe you've heard how distraught I was about my family and, you know, what they were going through at that moment that I could imagine.
Yeah, we're all real broken up about it.
It was my understanding that if I went to the Summerlin Area Command for them to just take this DNA and to take photographs of me, that I would be allowed to just come right back to my vehicle and go on my way. That was what I was led to believe. And then, can I get, and I was led to believe that. And later I found out that 5 minutes after that my vehicle was towed away. May I get YouTube? Yes, that should be a CAD log from a traffic stop.
There's a knife. There's a stabbing. Horrible, brutal stabbing.
You two is admitted.
Thank you, sir. And throughout this, you can see how they're
It's approaching
They're
5
mentioning that
p.m.
I'm
When this was
going to Palo
done,
Verde
so
to drop my
expecting it might be
stepson off at the
towards the end here.
bus stop for LBA. on page 9 of this catalog, it's about the sixth line down says on September 7th, 2022 at 8:09 a.m. request tow. So I was led to believe that I'd be able to come right back home, but when the tow was called in, or when you see a tow in that report a few minutes later, I don't know that that was really what was intended.
Thank you, Pammy. Glad
I
I could please.
Disciplinary command. They did the swab, they did the photos,
He seems like he's running out of
and then
steam.
they took my jeans. I don't know how we're doing for time, but
That means I'm done, and I want to
my jeans, and
consult with my lawyer.
also there's a photo as well.
Oh, Jen, that's so nice of you. Oh yeah, from True Crime News. Thank you for continuing to watch. Thank you for all your support. That made my day. I really appreciate those kind words. Thank you. I just continue to be fascinated with this guy's kind of behavior, even with the judge. This, as if they're all on the same team, as if they're all just trying to make sure the jurors get this whole crazy mess unraveled. Oh, thank you, Couch Juror. That's very sweet of you. Appreciate you guys. Thank you guys all so much for being here with me to go through this. I was expecting it to be a lot more fascinating, but
Can we also publish
we
that?
got some
Is
free
that photo okay?
education on probate, so you can thank me for that later.
There should be. I'm sorry, go on. No, sir. It's one that shows the front of the pants.
Oh, thank you, Debbie. Yeah, we're going to try to start doing more of these lives. So if you guys enjoy it and you'll keep coming back, I'll keep doing it. Only thing going to stop me is when the kiddos go down. So
Actually, it may take a few more minutes, Your Honor. So I don't know if you want to extend it.
yeah, when this guy finishes.
All right, so at this time we are going to end for the day. During this recess, admonish not to
love
discuss or communicate with anyone, including your fellow jurors, in the way
cutting
regarding
this
the case
off.
or its merits, either by voice, phone, email,
Okay.
text, internet, or other means of communication or social media. Read, watch, and listen to any news or media
She wants
accounts or
to get the
commentary
heck out
about
of
the case.
there.
Do research.
Never read these
consult
instructions
dictionaries,
faster in her
internet,
whole life.
or reference materials. Do any investigation, test a theory,
All right.
recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own, or form or express any opinion regarding the case until it's finally submitted to you. We'll be in recess till tomorrow morning at 10:30. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
And all right, actually, very good.
Just you just oozes this kind of absolute a-hole who is super sweet and nice to all their employees when the boss is present. When the supervisor comes to visit, then he's just oozingly nice to all of his employees. That's exactly what this guy seems like to me. Did the defense rest today? No, they haven't rested. They're going to let him finish. I got to imagine he is their final witness. They wanted to end their whole case on this. So I imagine he will finish up tomorrow. I also imagine that the judge is going to have a little chat with the attorneys, the defense attorney, be like, listen, I'm giving him a very long leash, but he is really starting to push my patience. With it being explained, by the way, unless you want me to start sustaining my own objections on relevance and in front of the jury, go ahead and wrap this up yourself, sir, and try to maintain some dignity, if she can put it that way. If you guys have questions, throw them in the comments. I'll try to answer as many as I can. But again, what we saw today, you just do not see. You can go an entire career and never see somebody testify like this. Like we learned about it, we were trained on it and how to handle it. But I've never actually seen, I think maybe one time in a misdemeanor case, I may have seen a situation like this where a person wanted to testify. Usually it's people who, are suffering from some sort of mental, health issues, and they've got a right to testify, and their client can't stop them from doing it. And they're going to have to let them go up there, but the lawyer is not going to take part in perjury themselves. Tiffany says that Ortiz's, Saturday we have our first members only live stream. So please tune into that. You guys, the guys everybody who's joined us as members, thank you so much. And as part of our thanks to you, we're doing this members only live stream. And I'll be honest, I don't really have a whole bunch of topics picked out. I thought I'd talk a little bit about my background, who I am, where I came from, what I did as a prosecutor, maybe get into some fun war stories, and then talk a little bit about, what I've got going on now with the wife and kids and everything else. But feel free to bring your questions. So that's what we have planned for Saturday. Risa says, this has got to be the worst case I've seen, but I can't believe he's testifying. It is fascinating, but he's just awful. He is awful. He's really doing himself no favors. And by the way, it's not like this is a stupid man. He's only stupid in that he has no self-awareness. But this is, he got through law school. He's an educated person, held down a job, paying a mortgage, paying card bills and everything else. He's a functioning member of society, but he is so untethered from reality because of his own narcissism that this is what you get, that you get someone who testifies like this in their own murder trial, but are far more concerned with the job that they did as a administrator for, low-level administrator for the state than they are about the murder accusations against them. Brady says, how could you possibly keep a jury from talking about this loon before deliberations? Great question. They're going to have a good laugh about this when they finally get back into the jury room to deliberate. Couch Juror asks, Josh, who's more shocking, Tellis or Morrissey? In the Baldwin case. Oh, yeah, totally different levels of ridiculousness there. I think it was more shocking from a professional district attorney's perspective when it came to Baldwin and what took place in that. And plus, it just derailed that whole case. This guy is not really shocking when you know who he is. I mean, this is kind of par for the course for this gentleman. He's just so full of himself. And I'll say it again. He fully believes he's the smartest person in that room. He fully believes he's knocking it out of the park with the jurors, that they are eating up his every word, and that he is earning himself an acquittal here. And that, that all it was is that nobody really quite understood, and nobody's quite smart enough to exactly appreciate what took place. And just let me speak to the jurors. You see this a lot with actors and actresses, and I don't want to paint a broad brush against everybody in the entertainment industry, but you see a lot of times when they get accused of some sort of wrongdoing, their first instinct is put me in front of a camera and a microphone and let me just explain it to my adoring public how I'm really shouldn't be implicated here. And it usually ends up backfiring on them in a spectacular way. That's kind of the same thing at play here, is that this is somebody who's just so feeling like they have such control with their charm and ego that they're going to tuck themselves out of any problem. If you guys didn't see it at the front, and I haven't talked about it enough, we do have a brand new membership program open up. Robin McBroom just joined. Thank you so much for that. We plan on trying to provide as much additional content and access and every creative thing we've tried to think of. We spent a lot of time trying to think of all the creative things that we could contribute towards you guys who are members. So we thank you so much for your support, and we wanted to pay you all back for that, including we've got new merch coming out as soon as we can get it to the point where we feel like it's something that we want to share with everybody. So stay tuned for all of that too. And also, Palola's mom says, how far does the judge let him go? When is enough enough? great question. A lot of people keep on asking that. The answer is there is no time limit. It's not like the judge before he testified sat down and said, you've got 2.5 hours and that's it. He's the defendant. He has a right to defend himself. He has a constitutional right to, present a full-throated defense on his own behalf. And judges are very reluctant to ever curtail that, to ever get in the way of that, because they know how that could present real problems. If anything else a judge does, the biggest problem is when they look like they're somehow preventing the defendant from putting on an adequate defense on their own behalf. And so that's why you will see the judges get a lot of deference to situations like this. So judge is going to let him go on and carry on if it's somehow related to his defense. But when he starts to go really far afield, really into the weeds on the probate nonsense, as you saw towards the end there, the judge started to sustain her own objections on relevance. And the prosecutors are going to start up and start asking to, for objections on relevance and hearsay, and starting, they let them go wild for a while there, but they're really starting to jump in with these objections, and the judge is sustaining them, which is a cue to anybody who has a normal working brain to move along. Kathy says, well, the prosecutors questioned him. Absolutely. They're going to tear into him on cross-examination. He hasn't given them a whole bunch as far as specifics relating to the crime. I mean, he talked about, I cut my finger making, what was he making? Chop suey, chicken fried rice or something. He cut his finger. Okay. They're going to get into that. The washing of the vehicles, all of this other kind of stuff. They might get into a little bit of that. But really, he's spent so much time on irrelevant issues. It will be interesting to see how the prosecutors will handle it. I personally think, as a prosecutor, I would handle it by pointing out, isn't it true, sir, you would rather talk about your job as your time as an administrator than the evidence that links you to the murder in this case? I mean, who cares at this point if you start getting objected to on some of these questions? One of the things I always say is that you can go after a witness on cross-examination really hard if that witness has given you permission. And what I mean by that is, have they behaved in such a way that has made it so the jurors will allow you to go after them? The jurors are essentially saying, go have at it, dude. We heard enough of this person and we want to hear you chop them apart a bit. And I think that his behavior has absolutely done that. T-Suze has reminded me that we have a new True Crime News episode. I did a episode recently with Brother Counsel. Really interesting. That's out now. Also released, what is today? Today's Wednesday, but released on Tuesday. We did our Rex Heuermann case notes episode. I did a lot of research on that one, guys. If you know a little bit about that case, or you don't know anything about that case, watch that video and you will learn a lot about that case. I learned a tremendous amount researching it. I tried to include as much detail as I could without it, carrying on for several episodes. But quite frankly, you could do an entire docu-series on it. And it's awful and fascinating. And, if you at all are interested in serial killers and how they tick, he's the closest that we've come to. Well, he is a serial killer, but it's, in kind of more modern times, these serial killers who would go out, pick up people, torture, murder them, and then leave them, in some shallow grave in the middle of nowhere. And he did it time and time again. No, I did not see the Filcros were at his place again today. And that's one of the things I talk about in the episode too, is that the police have not given up on this case. It's not like they filed 3 murder charges, put this man away for his life, and said, job well done. They've gone back again and again and again, and they continue to tie him down to other victims. And I think they're going to even tie him to other victims that we already know about, already recovered bodies that they haven't quite tied to him yet. I think they're going to start tying him to more of them. So check it out. It's on our channel right now. What else do we got? Any other questions? Thank you so much, Pammy. I appreciate that. Thank you for checking it out. What else? Yeah, cross-examination is going to be interesting. I'm going to try to do this again tomorrow evening, cover the same thing, go back through it all. Forgive me guys that I can't do all this stuff live. And thank you, Tracy, for becoming a new member. I still got a day job. I was in court this morning. Another thing that I can talk to you guys a little bit more about on our members only streams. But, I was in court for most of this morning, handling my own clients. And so I came over here in the afternoon and give the kids a kiss, hello, and goodbye, and then come down here and sit with you fine folks for a little time going through all of this stuff. But I really do enjoy it. All right. Well, should we wrap it up? Has that been a good one? We've gone about 2 hours now and covered everything and listened to this nut job for steal, an hour and a half of our lives to tell us about probate law. And what's amazing about it too is just as he's actually getting into the evidence, it's towards the end of the day. So what I hope doesn't happen is that he's going to sleep overnight, catch his breath, and start into all of this nonsense again. I hope that he was working his way towards actually talking about the murders. But again, I am thrilled that so many of you were able to join me this evening. Thank you, everybody who came over from Bob and Jay. Those guys are fantastic and big supporters of me, and I really, really am appreciative. And so thank you for joining me. And I'm going to go ahead and go tuck the kiddos in. And I will probably be seeing you guys tomorrow night. Does that sound good? We'll try to do it if we can. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much. I've appreciated this, and I will talk to you all soon.